Greetings, Quester, and welcome to the Meddlesome Meeples. Grab an ale, sheathe your axe, and join us fireside. Here's your host, Matt Williams, with Richard and Heather.
Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Meddlesome Meeples.
We're back!
Yay.
I'm Matt.
I'm Richard.
I'm Heather.
Now, for regular viewers, you'll notice that we've not recorded and released the Meddlesome Meeples for a few weeks. Just to give you a heads up, that was my fault because we cancelled the recording because I was ill. And then...
Yeah, how dare you?
And then on top of that, we did try and record last week. Yep, and unfortunately, doing a podcast with no electricity is somewhat boring.
It
No, it was great. We enjoyed it, but we just couldn't record. We couldn't let you guys see it, and there's no point just talking to each other without an audience. So, well, no, it was fine. We just had a chat, which is basically a low-tech podcast. So
well, yeah. It was kind of a podcast with two viewers.
Two viewers. Yeah.
You basically just had a chat.
Basically, yeah.
That is kind of fine. That sums it up pretty well.
Covered some important topics, and no one will ever know.
No, I mean we solved world peace.
Yeah, we've forgotten now, but yeah.
If only we could have remembered. Next time we do that, we write it down, Richard.
It was solved for a few minutes there.
Yeah.
The whole problems of world peace. So anyway, now we're recording an actual podcast for everybody.
Yay!
Yeah. So thank you for watching and for caring just a little bit about our views about various subjects and board games and things.
So, thank you for coming back. This week we've got another two board games, both recently delivered Kickstarters that I'd backed. Richard, tell us about those.
One is Drawing Dead, which is a kind of a really cool kind of poker, and the other one is Dreamwars, which is an adventure-y cooperative game which we enjoyed very much.
Richard's also going to be talking to us about Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, which is the basis for the Expanse TV series.
Yes.
Heather?
We'll be doing Bards Corner. As usual. My bit doesn't really change.
Yeah.
We do talk about different bands and music each time, don't you?
Yeah.
Most of the time. Of course, this week we've got something special to bring you as well, which will be at the end of the Meddlesome Meeples show. And
special?
That is an interview I recently did over the phone, all the way from Arizona. Night Ranger's Kelly Keagy.
Wow.
Singer, songwriter, drummer. And we talk about quite a number of things, including some fan-submitted questions. Night Ranger's 12th studio album, Don't Let Up.
Oh yeah, that sounds really good.
Nights. Yeah, it was a really good interview. It was an absolutely hilarious guy to talk to. It was very funny, very humble as well. So we had a really good chat. So we've got that to look forward to.
There's actually been a lot going on, hasn't there?
Yeah.
No wonder we couldn't do a podcast for a while.
Too busy having lives.
Since then as well. So
No.
something. Yeah.
We were just doing the same stuff but not recording. Yeah.
Also interviewed Key Marcello, the ex-Europe, ex-Easy Action and Key of Hearts guitarist and songwriter and Rock of Ages star. So that will be in our next episode of the Meddlesome Meeples. So something to look forward to. So Richard, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, I forgot you were going to ask this.
Oh, I always ask this.
You have to quick make up something cool.
What can I pretend I've been doing?
The questers won't know if it's true or not.
You've
Say
been
something
here.
interesting.
Actually, I have been around here a lot, actually. Yeah, we've been playing a lot more games than we've actually talked about in the quest report. So we've kind of got a little bit ahead with the games, which has been really fun to do. And other than that, it's all been pretty normal, really. We're going to have to edit that bit out of me thinking about what I've been doing.
I'm too dull.
No.
Didn't I order you to get a life?
No, I have been.
It's an SG1 quote, by the way. It's not just me being mean.
I have been spending time with friends, which has been nice. Which I don't normally I'd have some kind of computer game to talk about or something like that, but I've actually been going out and meeting people. Yeah, and enjoying my life, basically. Falling into the trap of enjoying my life.
Oh, well, you can't. That's it. That is a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah.
Why is that bar Scottish? Because we kind of took a break from recording due to illness, it meant that as Richard said, we've been able to play some more games. So we've had an extra round of Mythos Tales, and we've played some other games as
fun.
well, and that's all been quite good, hasn't it? That we didn't have a chance to do before. I started watching Star Trek Continues.
Right, yeah.
So obviously we're going to be talking about Star Trek Discovery later, but that's a different thing. Star Trek Continues, if you aren't familiar with it, it was a fan-funded project, or crowd-funded rather than fan-funded, but I suppose fan-funded would also explain it.
No, some of the people that funded it weren't fans.
No.
They hated it.
Yeah, they hated Star Trek. But Star Trek Continues is basically a continuation of the 5-year mission from the original series, so the characters are Kirk, Spock, Sulu, Scotty, Uhura, etc. One of the things I really liked about it was that the guy they've got to play Scotty is James Doohan's son, Christopher.
I know that he actually sounds a lot like Scotty because he did the voice in Star Trek Online as well. When you go back in time and meet Scotty.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And like Marina Sirtis, who in The Next Generation played Councillor Deanna Troi, she's the voice of the computer.
And also she played the goddess of empathy in Barclay's holodeck programs.
That's right. So there's quite a few nice throwbacks to the different Star Trek series, and Sulu's played by Grant Imahara from Mythbusters, which is always fun.
Oh, cool.
You know, and actually in the first episode as well, it's only briefly, but you see Jamie Barber, who plays Leah Dharma in the new Battlestar Galactica. So there's quite a few interesting little bits in the show as well.
Did he quit and become a lawyer halfway through?
But it's quite faithful to the idea and the concept of the original series, which I like. So
I love the original series.
The effects and everything. Yeah, I think if it was just a new show that based on nothing, you'd be like, these effects are so cheesy.
Yeah.
But because it's based on the original series, you just love it.
Yeah, well, you can either do it in the 60s with lots of money or modern times with hardly any money. The same results, basically. Yeah.
What would be hilarious, though, is if they actually had to spend a lot of money to make those 60s effects.
Yeah, it would actually, yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I've been playing Star Wars: The Sith Lords, and I've been debating.
Oh no, don't!
I've been debating.
No more moral dilemmas.
No more moral dilemmas this time. I'm quite happy with my choices. I've gone all Jedi.
You seem calmer.
Yeah, it's the tranquility of the Force. It's a calming effect of my heart.
Full on Jedi.
Yeah, I went full Jedi.
Never do that.
No. And that's been good. And I've been debating growing a beard.
Well, you actually started.
I was going to say debating.
It's a little bit late for the debate stage.
The beard appeared.
Yeah. So there we are.
Yeah, it's going quite well, isn't it?
Yeah. I've been hammering out walls in the house.
Yeah,
that's not so good.
No, that's what I've been doing all week, rocking back and forth in a corner with a blanket over my head, going no. I was poorly, and
that's
I
quite
couldn't
a full
stop
week.
him, basically.
That's a true story as well.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. No,
Yeah.
I didn't know how they had these interests.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all the time. Yeah.
So there we go. That's our week. Let's get on with the show.
Seriously, I was rocking back and forth in a corner.
I don't really blame you. I mean, there was no electricity for a little while, and
I had a cough. I was taking an inhaler. And
It was
just
only-
in the air, and I couldn't stop him.
It was only what I could describe as moderate flooding.
It's like, please stop it. Here, have some whiskey. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Also a true story.
You drugged me with whiskey to me.
Also true.
Welcome to the Quest Report, and we are talking about Dreamwars, which is kind of a RPG type game, isn't it? But it's a little bit different to what we have previously talked about.
I think if you enjoy RPGs, if you are maybe a Descent player, then this is probably something that's going to be right up your alley, because it's got a different feel and look to it. If you dislike the Lovecraft theme as well, but you like some of the Lovecraft games, I think this again is going to be just a ticket for you.
It's kind of steampunk, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very unique in that sense, because personally I love a bit of steampunk.
I love a moderate amount. It's great.
Yeah, we love steampunk to the appropriate degree.
Yeah.
And that really does come through this. It's kind of like a steampunk fantasy, Lovecraftian mesh, isn't it? Really, but it uses quite a lot of similar mechanics to something like Descent.
Yes, because it's kind of a campaign, isn't it? You have. Well, I was going to say missions or something, but they're actually called ordeals. You go through ordeals in this game, which
is going to appeal to some people in our society, I think.
I think so.
Do you want to play an ordeal with me tonight? Basically, with this, it does use a similar sort of campaign system to probably not so much Descent as Imperial Assault, because in Imperial Assault, if you play a scenario, whether you win or fail dictates the next scenario you move on to.
Oh no, so it's like a choose your own adventure, but it's just whether you die or not.
And it's the same in this. If you play a scenario and you win, you move on to the next. If you play a scenario and you lose, you still move on to the next. It just changes which scenario you go to.
Did we win?
We won.
Yeah, I seem to remember us winning. It was a little while ago that we played this now, and I wasn't feeling all that well that day. But I still loved the game, and I think that is quite a testimony to the game.
I'm going to come straight out and say this. This is one of the most gorgeous boards I've played on.
Yes, it is a massive map, isn't it?
And the map is broke down to different symbols, and we'll throw a picture up on our Instagram page for you to have a look at. But the map itself is just a fantastic piece of artwork, and you've got it's broken up into different regions, different cities, different maybe monuments shown on the map, and you're moving your piece around the different squares to go to the different sections and do things.
The scale is very zoomed out, isn't it?
Yeah, rather than something like Arkham Horror, which is zoomed into one particular city.
Yeah.
This is zoomed out across a wide area. And as you're moving around the map, you've got different types of locations, because you've got trading locations, which could be either sort of like common trading for common items, tech items.
Yeah, like places in the city mostly. There's like a city of lots of trading locations.
And then you might go to somewhere else and you've got a healing location.
When you're out in the wilderness and you find a shrine, something like that. Yeah.
Places where you can go and get Kantichi songs. Places where
Kantichi, that's a word to remember in this.
And also there's locations, because there's 2 decks of cards. You've got the City Intrigues deck and the Outland Mysteries deck. So when you're in a city, if you land on a certain square, you draw a card, which might be a challenge or something, some sort of opportunity, but something that's quite interesting, like an event card. And then there are locations outside of the towns and cities where you land on, and there are these Outland Mystery cards, which again, you draw it and something might happen. And it's quite exciting, because you don't... but it does give you that kind of RPG feel as you're moving around the board.
Yeah, it's like random encounters, isn't it, really? But they're not all fighting monsters. It can be weird things happening. And
you're exploring these maps, and there are different portal locations as well, which will affect... depending on the kind of mission you go, because very much like something like Eldritch Horror and a lot of other games, you draw basically a villain, and that will dictate what ordeals you do, what missions you go on, and also it'll affect some of the cards that you draw. It'll affect the enemies.
Which enemies
appear.
Come out. So each one has its own deck, doesn't it?
Each one
enemies.
has its own deck.
Yeah.
So it does it very much. Your entire game is going to depend on which enemy you choose. Now, you can choose one, and some of them are more difficult than others. But also, you can, like we did, you can randomly draw and pick one, which is what we did. And I think sometimes, particularly if you're new to the game, that's probably going to be the best option. You take out maybe the extra difficult one.
Yeah, take out the worst ones.
And then just draw one of the other ones, because until you've played it, you're not really going to know what kind of decks do what and what villains do what. So you may as well just draw one at random. And I really enjoyed this game.
So, we had our own little character sheets, didn't we, which were quite small, these little cards, and we had various stats on it. We did it where we dealt out 2 random ones to each of us, and then we could pick which ones we were going to have. I really wanted to be this dwarf. This dwarf had like a metal arm and he was smoking a pipe. He looked really cool. But just from the ones that Matt and Heather chose, I just really thought I should be this pirate instead. So I was Lyanna Stern, the Sky Pirate, because she had the 2 kind of Kantichi things. So she could have 2 of those Kantichi cards, which are basically, I would say, like spells, but they're like music. So that's a bit of a unique feature of this, like just part of the aesthetic, really. So I had these cards. I can't remember if I used one, but I had them there if I needed them.
You did use them a few times.
Good,
yeah.
And I was in a delirious state.
They were always quite interesting. Yeah, you had man flu at the time.
Yeah.
I got to play a character called Eogar the Headhunter. Now, he was a wildkin fighter.
He looks like the guy from what's it, Twilight Imperium.
Yeah. Basically, he's like a lion-like barbarian warrior.
He's cool.
Who's pretty cool. And so the way the characters are built in this are quite interesting because you have your various skills. So my guy, for example, had no Kantichi skills, no tech skills, but he did have very good skill levels and very good melee skills. Now, in this, if you want to start a combat, unless you've got like a particular weapon or something you're using, you're just using your melee skill.
Yeah.
And and you get different tests to do during the game, and these work very much like the descent tests, which is you have a stat, you roll, and you're looking for that stat or lower to pass. Okay, so for my guy, on a 6-sided die, I'm looking for a 4 or less for a melee attack, and for certain skills, 3 or less to pass. But again, I quite like that kind of mechanic. And then I get a health, a movement skill on there. I get stats to tell me I can carry 4 common items, or I can carry 3 Kantichi, but 3 of the like special cards that you get in there. And then as well as that, you've got certain skills. Now this again is quite interesting because each character will have some skills on the right hand side column of their character card, and those are different abilities that they can use once they meet certain requirement.
Yeah, so it's got like a lock symbol on one side, which is basically the condition you need to be in to be able to use it. Like my first one says you have no dream shards left, so if I didn't have any, then the other side, an open padlock, is like what you can do in that situation. It says you can test your skill to draw the first dream shard in the appropriate discard pile. So that's the kind of thing.
Mine was more combat based because, for example, kill 5 nemesis with melee attacks. I could then choose a nemesis in play and re-roll any failed attack against it. So these are quite interesting. What you can do. Again, beautiful artwork on the cards.
Yeah,
really love the steampunk type art, and also because this was a Kickstarter from Royal Art Games, I got the full whack on the Kickstarter. So I got a load of really nice bookmarks that came with it as well. We got the art book, which had some really nice artwork and showed some of the different stages of development of the artwork. So that helped me to appreciate that as well. But yeah, I mean, I can't recommend the artwork in this game enough. It is beautiful to look at.
Yeah, even if you don't have the Kickstarter, you can enjoy all the artworart that's actually on the game.
The artwork that's in the map, that's in the different cards, etc., is fantastic. So you'll get that even at retail. I really like the way it played. I like the mechanics, the way it worked. And for our mission, we had to travel from one side of the map to the other, and then fight enemies inside the city to try and search for some missing individuals.
Yeah, that was what it was, wasn't it? Wasn't it the Burgomaster or something?
Yeah,
we had to find him. Yeah, so we started out in a city over on the right side of the map, over on the east, and we, looking back, we should have stayed in there a little bit longer and maybe
done some trading.
But
we were just eager to get out the door, weren't we?
I know. We just basically kicked down the door of the city and went straight out into the wilderness. Had to use melee attacks on things because we didn't have any weapons, but it went really well. And when we got to this other city, which was over on the left side of the map, by that time quite a few monsters had spawned, hadn't they? So there was little monsters. Well, some of them were quite big. There were some monsters going around. They were kind of chasing us a bit, but when we got to that other city, we had to keep kind of making these attempts to try and find like clues, didn't we? And if we failed, we got kicked out of the city again, and that meant us getting attacked because there were a lot of monsters out there waiting for us. And that bit was really fun because I think Matt was outside trying to fight some of these things. I kept going back into the city to try and search for this guy, but ended up back out in the battle. I can't remember what Heather was doing. She was the robot guy, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was helping. Basically, I was fighting, going into the cities of clues, and then moving back out to fight.
Yeah.
Heather was sort of cutting a path through the villains, and you were focusing on trying to complete the objective, and it worked really well doing it that way. So that because you get the villains, the nemesis creatures, are going to spawn on a regular basis. So you've got to keep them down, or you'll get overwhelmed by them. And that was it was quite good to sort of split up like that and go in different directions at that point around the city. Yeah,
I would be interested in trying some of the other ordeals, because obviously this was like a kind of a starting one in a way, but or it was our first anyway. But yeah, some of these seem quite complex, and I just think it could be interesting to have to do more objectives around more of the map. Yeah.
And it introduces some unique mechanics each different scenario as well, so that it's never going to be the same thing. In fact, according to the makers of this game, there's over 400 hours of content without replaying.
That is a lot of Tuesdays.
That is a lot of Tuesdays. So that will keep us going for a while. There's a lot of dice that come with this. There's also a couple of expansions that you can get, like the Adventurers Kit and Horror Hunters, that adds even more content to the game. So all in all, this is a very beautiful game to play. It plays well. It's got some really good mechanics. This one definitely gets a recommendation from me.
Yes, and I would just like to say that I love these kind of cooperative adventure games. We have a few that we like to play kind of on a regular basis, because I just like it a lot better than trying to defeat your friends at different things. It's nice to be the three of us against the game, or if anybody else plays with us as well. So it's so nice to have one that has that kind of teamwork, but is a kind of completely different mechanic and just a different way of playing. So it's nice to have one that's not just a copy of other ones with like different artwork and stuff, and in a different setting. It's nice to have one that actually does feel like it plays differently. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some more ordeals on this.
I did have one negative about the game, and this is me being a little bit finicky, but I think for other people it may be more or less of an issue.
Can we put up a finicky warning before you say it?
Yeah, hashtag finicky. And that was to do, as I said, the map is absolutely gorgeous, but the markings that show different territories in certain lights, because it's almost like they've taken a background so that you can get the full splendour of the map. But the lines that mark out which space is what,
they're like dotted lines, aren't they?
Yeah, and in certain lights, from certain angles, it can be quite difficult to tell which space is connected to which. That is partly a lighting issue, partly that it's not the lines aren't very strongly appearing on the map. But if they were, I think it would have spoilt the look of the map, so I didn't really mind.
Yeah,
it just meant that I kind of had to like lean over and try and sometimes move a little bit just to get a better angle to see the map from.
Yeah, well, some of the corners were a bit difficult to see which bit was in which little space, wasn't it?
It was more, I think, where one corner met several.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, some of them were like little crossroads.
Some were easier to tell, but it was all some of the little angled bits on the map and things that made it more difficult to see.
One of the things I liked about the spaces on the map was the fact that they were all different sizes. Yeah. So you didn't have to have any kind of mechanic about, it's harder to go across mountains than it is across fields, or the forest makes it more difficult, because if the terrain's difficult, basically the squares will just be smaller. It takes you more movement turns to get across it.
And if you follow the road...
Yeah, the road is a long, thin square. So you're just like, I'm there, woo, and I'm in another place. So yeah, I thought that was quite good. But
it was very nicely done, that mechanic.
It was, yeah. But I see what you mean, yeah, the spaces were a little bit difficult to see where they actually were sometimes. But yeah, obviously that's not a massive deal, is it?
No,
not when the map is so beautiful.
I would much rather have the map, and as I say, the map is so good. If I ever played through all 400 odd hours content of this, I would probably frame the map at the end. It's that nice.
Yeah, so in a few years, when we've done everything that's in this game, we'll frame the board.
There you go. So this one gets a Meeple recommendation. That's Dreamwars by Royal Art Games. And on this quest report, we're going to be looking at a recently delivered Kickstarter, Drawing Dead. Now, Drawing Dead is kind of like what's termed a Weird West
Is it?
When you've got like a Wild West theme, but you kind of put a weird spin on it.
Is that like what's it? The Dark Tower books with the gunslinger in the fantasy world.
I suppose that would probably some people would put that under Weird West.
Probably the original, because the book was like from the 70s. So, but no, board game style. Drawing Dead, yeah, definitely Weird West.
But this is a Weird West game. Now, in this, it's basically a take on poker. The idea of the game is that you are cursed to ever walk the land, and you've got to win this poker game so that you can finally let your soul go to rest.
Well, okay. that sounds weird. I can see why it's Weird West.
It's uplifting, really, is what it is.
Actually, yeah, we've played this a few times, and I'd forgotten that thing about what we were doing. I just see it as this really cool version of poker that we kept doing.
And that really is what it is. The theme is not really in this game. Mm-hmm. There's nothing strange or weird about this game at all, but it is still a Weird West game. But it is really just a variant of poker. But it's more. I mean, I've played poker before. I really enjoy playing Texas Hold'em, but this to me beats poker every time. There are variant differences to this in normal poker, because in poker generally you don't have your hand out on display for everyone to see.
You don't play it for souls.
No, and you don't play. Well, sometimes you do.
Depends how into it you are.
Depends how wasted you are on a Saturday night, which is not something I've ever done. But this game, you're trying to build a poker hand in front of you, but you've got your other secret cards in your stash which you can play to your hand. Now, you're going to have two types of cards in this. There are your poker cards, which is basically just a normal deck, but with nice artwork.
These guys.
And then you've got what's called roll cards. Now, these roll cards are all different characters that you're supposedly meeting in this setting. So they all give you a special ability. So you play a card to do a thing. So, for example, you ordinarily, instead of just going around the table placing bets, you put in. There's a communal pot that starts off with 5, and whenever you play a card from your hand, a poker card, then you pay a chip into that pot.
So it builds up automatically, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then once you've got your 5 cards in front of you, if you want to play another card to replace one of the 5 cards that's there, you play your new card, discard your old card, and pay another chip. So that pot will build up and up over time.
You can do as many of these things as you want.
Yeah.
You can play as many roll cards as you want during your turn. You can put down as many poker cards to your hand as you want, as long as you can pay the chips. Then it's basically, once you're done, it goes on to the next person, but there's a clean-up at the end where you discard any that are over, and your hand has to be 5 cards by the end of that.
You can have 5 cards in your hand, which is called your stash, and 5 cards in front of you, which is your hand.
Yeah. That's why it's confusing.
Yeah. But there's basically, for setup, it's very simple, because you're just shuffling and putting your cards out. Each player starts off with 15 chips. Each player starts off with 2 poker cards and a roll card, and then on your turn you draw 2 poker cards and 1 roll card, and then for your second step of your turn you can play a roll card for free. You can play a poker card which you pay for, and then if your card is the best poker hand, then you get to claim the button.
Yeah.
Now, the reason that's important, some of the roll cards will allow you to do different things. They'll say if you've got the roll card, you can steal half the stash in front of you. Or
I did that a lot.
Yeah. And the other thing that this is significant, if you hold this and it comes back to your round, back to your turn without anyone taking it from you, you've won that round, so you get to take the stash. And then at that point you can check if you've got 40 chips and you're the one with the most, then you win that round. So, you win that game rather if you've got the 40. So it is really interesting. But some of it's these roll cards that really make it better than poker to me, because there are cards that like Ricky Love cards you play are free this turn, gain a chip for each heart card that you play.
Ricky Love kept turning up in my hand. Got embarrassing. It's like I'm just constantly playing the Ricky Love card.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of him, basically.
There's the Shifty Sisters, which is called a bad guy card, which is usually means it does something to somebody else. You choose a player and look at their stash. You can steal a poker card from them and trash a poker card. Baron Von Doom, each other player trashes an up card of their choice. If you've played another bad guy card this turn, put those cards in your stash. The Gunslinger, trash any number of cards from your stash. Trash that many up cards.
All the bad guys.
Yeah, these are all the bad guys.
The Outlaw.
You've got the Outlaw, if you have the button, steal half the pot. Rounded up. And the Dirty Cheat, steal any up card. The Desert Rose, draw 3 poker cards.
I like playing the Dirty Cheat card when we're playing poker. Yeah. It just feels good.
The Magic Man, draw a poker card for each of your red up cards.
Magic Man! From Adventure Time.
Ace Rogers was one that we used quite a bit because it was very powerful. When you play this, choose one of your up cards, treat this card as a copy of that card. And then that, whether you lose the original one that you've copied or not, this will stay as that.
Basically make any amazing poker. If you've got that and the Joker one, because the Joker can be a wild card, you can make really cool hands quite easily, can't you?
Because then you can very easily copy, because you can make the wild card the best card available. Because the wild card will become whatever card makes the best card, the best poker hand that's possible. And if you've not played poker before, you don't have to worry, because on the back of this, it actually teaches you your poker hand rankings. So it will teach you, what a royal flush is, what a straight flush is, what a full house is, a 3 of a kind, which is quite self-explanatory. But some of these are quite explanatory, like a pair, 2 pair high card, 3 of a kind are all pretty self-explanatory, 4 of a kind is. But some of the others, if you've not played poker before, you will need some sort of reference, but you can get that from this. And what we did before as well was because my wife hasn't played poker before, we put up on the screen just a list as well, so that you can look at that without necessarily needing to look at the back of the rule book. But it's a very straightforward game to learn, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to kind of in your head stop comparing it to poker, because it's like, not what I mean, obviously it is a big comparison, but you have to kind of forget that while you're learning the rules, because it is kind of different, because you're not keeping your hand secret in a way. You're putting that out on the table so everyone can see. You kind of see the hand that other people are building. But
you can keep it secret in the sense that what I did on a couple of rounds, rather than playing cards in front of me to build up a hand,
build them up in your
hand. I was building them up in my stash so no one could see it, and then I'd pay to put all 5 out in one go.
Yeah.
And
then I had roll cards to steal them.
Yeah. But that was quite good, because then you can still hide that. And there are things as well, like Nina Nails, and there's others that will you can play the sheriff card that allows you to stop another roll card, so you can stop a bad guy from stealing from you.
I once kept that for ages, just until somebody did something terrible with a roll card so I could use it. But, yeah.
And the roll cards are really what make the game, because they are interesting to play. They do bring a different dynamic to what is essentially just a normal poker game. And without those, it would just be playing poker. But these elevate it to a different standard, and it's what makes me think, if I was given the choice to play Drawing Dead or poker, I'd choose Drawing Dead every time.
Yeah, I would. It does feel more like an actual game than poker. I mean, I have played it with some of my friends for Pogs before, which was a bit odd, but that was kind of fun. Obviously, I don't really I've never gambled, so we just had a load of Pogs. This is like ages after the age of Pogs, but we just used them as chips, and as whoever had the most at the end wins. And I was absolutely terrible. I never had any Pogs, and but I enjoy like all the hands and everything, and like learning what beats what. I think that bit's really good, but I just can't get the hang of the like when to call and when to raise and when to fold, and not going woohoo when you've got a good hand, things like that. But this basically, it had all the fun aspects of poker. I felt like we were being quite cool the way we were just kind of putting cards down and putting a chip in the middle. It feels like the cool game of poker, but it flowed a lot better, I thought.
Yeah, and because of the roll cards, it meant that you could steal other people's cards. You were playing cards to get extra cards. There was a lot that you could do. There was a lot of options because you were getting the roll cards every turn, and combining them could make for some quite powerful strategies.
Yeah, you can do pretty good chains. Yeah.
For example, at one point I had a couple of cards that I knew would allow me to do there were bad guy cards that would allow me to do things to other players.
The extra bad.
So I play one at first that I didn't really want to do to get other people to play their stop cards to stop me from doing it, so that then I could play my next bad guy card and they had no defense. Things like that were fun. And it was just a fun variant on it. And I would say that it, as you say, it was smoother, it was faster than that. The artwork, if you're not into Wild West, it is a bit macabre, but nothing.
That festival they have in Mexico, is it? Or no, not. I can't remember where they have it. Where the one that's on Spectre anyway, on James Bond, where they've all got skull face paints on.
Yeah,
it just basically is that.
You're thinking of the Festival of the Dead.
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got most of these have got like white face paint on them on the cards, so they are a bit macabre. But if that's not going to bother you, then I don't think you'll quite enjoy that. The actual deck of cards as well have some funkier artwork than a normal deck. I mean, like the Joker's a wild. It's got a skull with a jester hat on it, and
skull.
Some of the other royal cards, like
Spooky.
the Queen, Jack, King, have got crowns on them and things, and they look cool.
Yeah, just normal cards. That's one of the nice things about it, that you have just got a full deck of normal playing cards to play it, but they are kind of themed. Do you feel like Weird West?
Yeah.
Which is a term I've learnt this podcast.
And if anything happened to your poker cards from me, you could just replace them with a normal deck. I mean, you get the little like cardboard chips in this. We didn't actually bother with those because I've got some proper poker chips.
Yeah, we use other chips.
Just use those instead.
They kind of clatter nicely when you put them in the middle.
Yeah, make for a nice little pile.
Yeah.
But yeah, I highly recommend this as a fun alternative to poker, and if you like poker, I think this will you will enjoy this more than poker.
Play it responsibly. Don't lose all your souls.
Well, that was fun. Let's carry on with the show. The Meeples Alive!
And welcome to this Tiny Meeples Big Talk. Now, this week, we're not going to be doing one of our big mashups. We're not going to be doing a big versus topic.
There's no question mark on the title anyway.
There is not. This week, we're just going to be presenting our opinion of our first impressions, perhaps, of Star Trek Discovery.
Now, I thought this question was just going to be Star Trek Discovery. That's the title of this big
Star
talk.
Trek Discovery?
Yeah, Discovery. Star Trek. So,
Yeah.
basically, there's a new Star Trek.
Yes, and if you've not been that familiar with us before, you'll have noticed that we both are big fans of Star Trek and Star Wars. And Stargate and most things with Star in the title.
Most things. I was so happy that they brought out a new series of Star Trek. That is cool.
I was really looking
well
forward
done,
to a
people.
new series of
Whoever
Star
the
Trek.
hell did it.
But I had a different reaction to Richard.
And I was just talking about like when I suddenly realised it's out tomorrow because it kind of suddenly came up on my Netflix. Because I knew they were going to make a new series of Star Trek because obviously we found out a few years before, and I thought, oh, that's going to be so great. But they're going to kind of stream it on, I think it was the CBS, having their own streaming service and everything. So I thought I'm going to have to kind of set up one of those when it comes out, because I thought that's definitely going to be worth it because I want to see whatever the new Star Trek is. But then it just suddenly came up on my Netflix, like, it's on here every week. So I was like, yes, because I already watch Netflix all the time anyway.
It's kind of strange though, isn't it? Because if you're in America, you need a CBS subscription. But here, because we're not in America, we get it on Netflix.
I know, that's sweet.
But my reaction was a little bit different because when I first heard there was going to be a new Star Trek series, obviously at first I was like, yeah, new Star Trek. But then I thought, going to the past again? Because I wanted them to do something set after the Dominion War, sort of from the end of DS9.
It's what you call the past.
Yes.
Everybody else and the time-space continuum calls it the future.
Yes. But you know what I mean? It's in a Star Trek universe that is now obviously the Kelvin timeline.
Actually, I found out recently it's actually the Prime timeline. I thought it was
Really?
Kelvin. Yeah, it looks very Kelvinish, but apparently no, it's Prime.
Oh.
So
I
there's
did not
going
know
to
that.
be no Romulans that we see. Apparently the Romulans are kind of a sore point with the writers. Nobody's allowed to mention Romulans in the writers' room because it starts arguments. That's what I've heard anyway.
The thing is, I kind of, I really wanted them to go, because we've got so much established timeline in Star Trek.
Yeah,
I kind of wanted them to sort of take that forward from the point of, you know, Deep Space Nine and Voyager returning to the Alpha Quadrant, and because there's so much I think that they could do there. I mean, with the Cardassian Union rebuilding, as well as the Federation and the Klingons and everyone else at the end of the Dominion War, I feel like there's so much scope for a new series there, and perhaps exploration into the Delta Quadrant, the Gamma Quadrant. You know, there's so much that they could have done. I just thought, if we're going back again, and the problem is that I think inherently when you go back like that, you put in roadblocks in front of yourself, because you kind of, every time you think, well, we could write this, but it doesn't agree with the existing, you know, timeline continuum. There are going to be those people that say, well, it doesn't matter, let's just go with it, because it'll be good for the story. And then you've got other people going, but this isn't what it's established. And you're kind of throwing up objections that if you just gone into the future, wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So you're kind of putting unnecessarily problems in place for yourself to work around. And also, when it actually started and the Klingons came on, I was like, what the heck have they done with the Klingons? One friend of mine described it best when he said that it was like they'd decided to make them look like the Drow from Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
It kind of doesn't look
witticism there.
Yeah, it kind of didn't look like Star Trek to me.
Klingons look like the Drow,
but they did look more like some sort of fantasy.
They reminded me a bit of the Dark Elves from Skyrim as well.
Yeah,
without the hair.
Well, the Drow are Dark Elves, so yeah. So we're in agreement on that.
Maybe there's several people copying several people. Maybe Skyrim stole it from Dungeons and Dragons. I
mean, the thing is, in Star Trek, the Klingons have changed several times now over the various series, from the original series to the Next Generation.
You just change the
Enterprise,
Klingons.
And well, they can't just do something horrible to O'Brien anymore. They have to.
No. Maybe they went round to Cold Meanie and let down his tyres or something.
So I wasn't particularly happy it was going to be set in the past, but I thought I'd give it a chance.
There was lots of sadness coming from this house.
Yeah. There were things that I thought was going to be interesting. I wasn't quite convinced of, like having a main character.
Convince me.
Yeah, but like having a main character. Star Trek have never really had a main character. It's always been the crew, and you get different stories that will follow different members of the crew. Whereas this has got its main character, and it follows a more continuous storyline as opposed to the more episodic feels of, say, the Next Generation.
I don't know. I didn't really.
Voyager.
Yeah. When you were talking about that, I can kind of see what you mean.
It's like a continuous story arc.
Well, basically, normally they have the main character being the captain, and this time they haven't. But I know what you mean. There's from the Next Generation onwards, they started doing, like, focusing. This time it's like a Geordie story. This time it's a Data one. More often than not, though, it does tend to focus on the captain quite a lot. But this time, it's very much. So far,
I'd say
kind of
Next
a
Generation,
bit of a
it probably focused on Data as much as it did on Picard, to be honest.
It did. Well, there's lots of interesting stuff you can do with Data's character, but no, they did. They realised that it wasn't working and that they had to start focusing on one character per episode, basically, but with an A story and a B story.
I don't think you can say it wasn't working. I mean, it worked so well across.
No, this is just an interview I heard.
Oh, right,
they said it. They said it wasn't.
So that
working,
was their view then.
Yeah. It was becoming difficult to write because it seemed a bit weird just having it like an entire crew every episode. It worked back in the 60s, kind of. Well, obviously, in the 60s you had Kirk, Spock, McCoy were the main characters.
Yeah.
And then later on, there was some that focused on Scotty or Chekhov or somebody. But
well, it was more the later series, wasn't it? I say the Next Generation DS9 that did that, because then they would have episodes with literally every member of the crew, and in DS9's case, even members that weren't of the crew. So there was quite a few of episodes that were Ferengi centric with.
Oh yeah, but they're all characters,
Quark, but they were recurring regular characters.
They don't have to have a Starfleet badge and paycheck in fake non-existent money. So, kudos. That's what they get paid.
Yeah. But it did work. It did work well. I think perhaps they thought that maybe having a single main character might make it easier to market.
Single
perhaps.
female Starfleet. I don't know, maybe. It seems a little bit like it's... I know it's different to this, but a little bit like the droids in Star Wars, that they're the ones that seem to be narrating the story. Obviously, it's focused on Michael, what she's doing at the moment. But I kind of imagine it turning into more of a... we've only watched 6 episodes so far, so I imagine it becoming more focusing on different characters as it goes later on, once the crew is a bit more established and everything. Because really, we're in kind of the Klingon War story arc, which Michael had a role in starting. I don't really agree with the other people on the ship that I don't think she started it so much. I think it was going to start anyway.
I don't blame her for that.
No,
I think she's been unfairly maligned in that sense.
They've just been reading the headlines, haven't
but
they?
What she did, it was all fake news. But what she did do, I mean, I'll come back to this in a minute, because I was going to say that one of the things about having episodes where it focuses on different members of the crew that's good is that if you don't like a main character, or if you don't like one character, so say for example in the Next Generation, if you didn't like Riker, and who didn't like Riker, but if you didn't like Riker, you'd be like, all right,
crazy.
All right, I don't like Riker, but this is an episode about Geordie, and I love Geordie.
It could be
an
the
episode
ones
about Beverly, and I love Beverly.
If you didn't like Riker, you could watch one about Barclay, who's like the opposite of Riker.
The anti-Riker.
Basically. If they shook hands, the universe would explode.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. So whereas if you kind of have one main character, you kind of put in a lot of eggs into that basket, because if someone doesn't like that main character, then they're probably not going to like the rest of the show.
Which is why you don't like that character and you don't like the rest of the show. Actually,
my views on the show changed probably around episode 4.
Good, because you were getting annoying for a while.
Dude!
Sorry.
To the face!
Yeah.
Is this your knife in my back?
I could say it behind your back.
But no, I'm not a fan of Michael Burnham's character.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. I just find that in the first couple of episodes, I could understand they were trying to go for like a Spock level of emotionless, a Vulcan level of emotionless. But it just didn't sit with the character. I mean, Sonequa Martin Green, who plays Michael Burnham, is a very good actress.
You gotta say what she was in. No.
She's been in other stuff before that I've watched, and in those, I genuinely cared about what happened to her.
I didn't know who this actress was. I'd never seen her or anything.
And in this, I don't know, there was just something, it felt unlikable about the character. Perhaps that's what they were going for, and we're gonna see her becoming more human as time goes on. And I think that's what's happened slowly over the arc. She's started to act slightly more human, and as that's happened, she's become slightly more likable, I think, in a way.
Right.
But like in episode 2, we saw her effectively assaulting a captain and committing mutiny. And then in the next episode, she's saying to Captain Lorca that she's going to live and die by the principles of Starfleet. And that just didn't seem right to me. It was kind of an element of bad writing. But there are characters...
that wasn't bad writing. She's been sitting in a cell for 6 months at that point. And, I mean, she wanted to save her crew, which she saw as being more important in that situation, and she made a bad decision, but she wanted to take her medicine, basically, which is what I think that's in line with Starfleet ideals, really. But
she wanted to stay as a prisoner and serve her time.
I think you can say it's not logical.
I respect that.
Yeah,
I do respect that. I did like Saru's character.
I loved Saru. When I first watched it, I thought, I like that tall alien who's scared of everything.
I wasn't entirely sure about him at first, but it's probably more I like him when he's on the Discovery and not on the in the pilot episodes. I did think it was a shame that they killed off Michelle Yeoh's character, because she was good and she was interesting and she's a good actress. So that was a shame. But for me, I found I was watching several episodes and I literally didn't care about any of the characters. That changed over time. As I say, I find that...
Why do you want to care about characters? They're on a cool ship in space.
Because I think you kind of, to be emotionally invested, you kind of have to give a damn whether a character's going to live or die in a given situation. But I just didn't feel like that at all. No, none of the characters mattered to me. But as time's gone on, as I say, I've sort of... Michael doesn't annoy me the way she did at first, so that's always a positive. Tilly was the one that I first started to really like.
Well, she seems a lot more human than a lot of the others. I mean, in Star Trek in general, the humans aren't very human because they're kind of like some kind of post-scarcity, almost perfect examples of ideal humans. So they seem a bit weird. For example,
early series, Julian Bashir, Beverly Crusher, these sort of characters would probably fit very well into what you've just said.
Well, basically all of them. I mean, on DS9 there was a massive difference between the human characters and the Ferengi. I've heard it said like the Ferengi seem like the most human ones there. So
very relatable.
Yeah, that's it. And everybody seems obviously they're acting very well, but this seemed kind of almost wooden next to it because they're having to play these roles. Obviously, actually O'Brien seems very human as well.
Yeah.
He's obviously
it's the Next Generation. O'Brien,
yeah, I mean, I like that one in the Next Generation where he doesn't think he hates Cardassians, but he's being horrible to the Cardassians all the time. That's very kind of human, I think. Yeah,
and but yeah, Tilly was the first one I thought was actually the first glimmer of a likable character. Though I quite liked Ash Tyler, who we met in episode 4. We met Ash Tyler.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. I mean, to me, I'm just so sick of talking about characters and things, and it's like characters are always the thing that you have to talk about. Like when I did English literature and things like that, and I just, I like the ship, the settings, the adventure, all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to say characters aren't important. It's just what matters to me in Star Trek is that I can kind of put myself there and want to be there and be part of the adventure and everything. And to me, I really have been enjoying the Discovery episodes like on that level for the whole thing. I know you've had very strong feelings about the characters right from the first episode, and I couldn't even join in with you in the conversations or like argue in favour of them because I just wasn't bothered. I mean, you might as well ask me if I like the light switch or not. I mean, it's just so like the characters were just there.
So why do people pay the cast so much if no one cares?
I don't care. They can do what they want. But yeah, I enjoyed the elements that they put into the pilot episode. So I really enjoyed that.
Takuvma the unforgettable.
Yeah. I like
Takuvma the easily forgettable.
the Klingons were a bit weird, but I liked the Starfleet stuff more than the Klingon stuff because the Klingon language has got a bit weird. Like it keeps starting and stopping. It's a bit difficult to listen to. But what I liked was, and I know you didn't like this so much about Michael, that she was like emotionless and everything. I just really liked the fact that they had a human that had learnt the Vulcan purging of emotions and stuff. I think that's something that I've wanted to see in a long time, and I've always liked the idea of being able to do that. I mean, if ever I've been upset or something, I just think I wish I was a Vulcan, and I just love the idea that they've had that now in Star Trek, more so than they did in Voyager when Harry Kim suddenly decided he wanted to be Vulcan and it lasted like half an episode. But yeah, just because the Vulcans aren't naturally emotionless.
With Harry Kim, he'd been emotional all his life.
He was in love with a girl.
And then he just decided, I want to purge these emotions so I don't have to feel bad because I'm lovesick.
It was so great that
Whereas with Michael,
Tufok was teaching him. So,
she'd been raised from a young age to follow Vulcan philosophy.
Which we now learn as kind of Savik's experiment.
But I think it kind of... The thing is, what's important to remember there is that Vulcans have only purged the showing of emotion. They still feel those emotions. They just try and hide them.
I don't know. I think they use meditation to purge them. They still have them, but they just won't feel them on the conscious level. So it is the same. It's not like they're just kind of bottling it up.
I think Spock really encapsulated that because he had his human side to fight against as well. And of course for Michael, she's fully human. She's not part Vulcan. She's just had that training. Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but it kind of somehow it came across in a more snobbish way to me than it did with Spock.
Oh no, the Vulcans are snobs. I won't argue with you on that.
It kind of that kind of came through very much strongly with, I think, with Michael. Whereas with Spock, there was kind of like sometimes an aloof superiority.
A lot of the time, actually.
Never that quite the snobbishness.
Yeah,
but he did show a lot of sass.
He did. I was just going to say that. Like, if you watch the original series, like Spock seems to show disapproval a lot, and
just with an eyebrow.
Yeah, well, 2 eyebrows sometimes. There's a lot where it ends with Spock kind of going like giving them the right look,
usually to
right
McCoy,
stink face look. Yeah, that's so. Yeah, and I mean, at the moment I'm watching Discovery obviously once a week when it's on. I'm also, my mum and dad have recently just started watching Enterprise, and so I've been watching those like most evening. I watched them when they were on anyway, but. The Vulcans are so snobby in that. I mean, the whole it should, instead of being called Enterprise, it should be called We Hate the Vulcans. And so yeah, I'm getting a lot of weirdness from Vulcans at the moment on both programs. So
I mean, with regards to the actual storyline, I'm enjoying the Star Trek Discovery storyline, and that's to me is why I've probably stuck with it, even though I didn't really like a lot of the characters.
Well, you have to watch it anyway.
I like, yeah, well, I wouldn't. And but I like the storyline. I like where they've gone. I thought it was interesting. I do think that the Spore Drive sounds stupid.
It does sound
but
stupid.
It looks amazing when it's used.
I absolutely... The first time I used it, and the saucer section was spinning, and then it all flipped over, then just teleported across the universe. I think that was great. I love that.
And that shows clever writing. If they want us to swallow something so inherently garbage, give us something shiny to look at.
Yeah. I don't. When I actually think about it, though, I don't think it's as crazy as it seems when you consider a lot of the other things that there are in Star Trek. And I think I might have already mentioned it today when I was talking about the Expanse, but gravity plating is something I've always had a problem with.
Well, if we're going to start analysing Star Trek for science, it's going to fall apart.
Well, this is it. But Spore Drive isn't as crazy, crazier than the rest of it. It is a very different idea, though. And when Stamens was explaining, it's like physics as biology or something. I think that's really good because everything is made of like fundamental quarks, and spores are so small. Once you get so close to Planck's constant, loads of weird stuff does go on. And just this idea that there's life forms that can kind of travel that. I don't think it's
I like that idea with like the Ripper creature. That he was an interesting
giant water bear.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Cool.
I felt sorry for him, but it was interesting. But
yeah,
I think because I mean with Star Trek, people think, oh, Star Trek it's scientific. It's actually a lot of the time it's not. It's just it's put across in a way that sounds scientific.
Use a lot of scientific words and concepts as well. They'll put them in, but there's just so much craziness with it because the ship has to on the inside be like a normal room that you'd have on Earth, and there's just so much you have to invent to be able to do that in space. And also obviously there's transporters, warp drive. It's all outside of what we understand of physics, but they do actually spend a lot of time kind of thinking about how it actually works in their universe, so it's all right. But you just kind of know that it's going to be crazy.
But I'm slowly starting to be more accepting of Michael Burnham. I really like Shazad Latif as Ash Tyler. He's a really good character.
I'm not too bothered about him.
I quite like Tilly because I felt Tilly was more relatable. There was just something inherently likeable about Tilly. Lorca, at first, I wasn't that keen on the captain.
But
I
thought he was going to be a baddie.
I kind of had that feeling, and as time's gone on, he again seems to be slowly more relatable. And I think in the last episode particularly, without going into spoilers, there were a few instances where he started to seem more human.
Yeah.
And we started to warm to him a bit.
Yeah,
but
and he
Doug
loves
Jones
his ship. That's the one thing you need about a captain, and it's just I know I wasn't going to really be too bothered about characters, but I just know when he's on the screen, there's going to be interesting things said and done. Yeah. And that's what I like about him.
But both Doug Jones, who plays Saru, and Jason Isaacs, who plays Captain Lorca, are both very good actors. You know, and brilliant. Can't fault them on that. So, as time's gone on, I think because I've sort of stuck with it because of I like the idea of the story, I've started to like Discovery more. I do think there's a lot of flaws in it, but hey, there's going to be flaws in any show.
Yeah.
But certainly nothing enough that's going to put me off watching it. And ultimately, I mean, it's Star Trek. I was if they'd slapped the USS Enterprise on the side of a garbage truck and filmed that for a few hours, I would probably watch that. You know,
it is just a tragedy that I don't live on a starship, and like there's more Star Trek. It's like I just kind of just see myself there all the time. It's like I'm just like I'm on the bridge at the side going, oh, how are we going to get out of this one?
One of the things that someone said to me is like, oh, it's dark Star Trek. I mean, why do we want dark Star Trek? Star Trek's meant to be light. And I was thinking, did you ever watch the Dominion War seasons of Deep Space Nine?
Well,
it was got pretty dark at times for DS9 and for Voyager. In the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah,
with the
but to be fair, Star Trek generally it's a very optimistic view of the future.
Yeah.
But obviously there has to be drama and things in it. I do know that DS9 was started because it was getting a bit too optimistic for everybody, and they needed to have a darker series. So DS9 is basically Star Trek at its darkest. You've basically got the
so far.
Yeah, and this. Obviously, once Battlestar was out, the newer series of that, a lot of sci-fi kind of followed that a little bit, that kind of style, and I feel like the Star Trek has had to kind of incorporate that a bit, but not too much. I mean, I was watching it thinking, yeah, this is darker than normal for Star Trek, but like if this was Battlestar Galactica, like half the characters would have committed suicide by now. There'd be all kind of stuff going on. They'd be starving or something.
Compared to some things like that and Stargate Universe, for example, it's not.
The Star Trek Universe.
But Stargate Universe, but the
Stargate.
But sorry. I think Stargate Universe, its darkness was what almost killed it, because a lot of people were tuning in expecting SG-1, expecting witticisms from a O'Neill Shepherd-like character.
Well, I'm living in the UK. We get the aftermath of everything, and we just find out like whether things got ratings or not, and had to get cancelled, and
we hate Fox.
Yeah, and we just have to live with the results.
Yeah.
So I mean, I loved Universe, and
I loved Universe.
Yeah.
It was a tragedy that ended.
So yeah, I see what you mean. It's not as dark as a lot of things, and I think that as well. I do think it is a very positive view of the future, but because humanity is kind of going out as explorers and everything, it just so happens that they've started exploring too close to the Klingon Empire, and they don't like it. So
I think if you were a viewer and you were coming to this without any of the back history of Star Trek, I think you would probably like it more. Because, I mean, we've both got long histories with the franchise. We've watched, all the different series, and we've enjoyed them all. But that means that kind of for us, we can kind of look at it and kind of go, well, hang on, they're using technologies that are way beyond whatever they had in.
No, you do that. I just go with it.
And like, well, if this, I'm kind of waiting for something bad to happen with the spore drivers to show why they're not using that in the future series.
But they had to genetically engineer stamens for it. And they're not allowed to do eugenics. So.
Yeah, things like that, But
there's a Khan Union Singh waiting in the wings.
Yeah, but if you were approaching this without any knowledge of Star Trek before, you didn't know that it was meant to be this optimistic view, you probably, I think, would like it even more than someone going to it with all that knowledge.
I don't know. I would still love to live on the Discovery, even all the stuff they go through. Obviously, normally, like on the Enterprise and everything, there was a problem every week. Like on the original 60s one, like you're flying along in your Constitution class Enterprise, and then a giant green hand grabs the ship. So that kind of stuff happens in Starfleet. So I've just been really enjoying having a new series of Star Trek, and I'm quite happy with the kind of things that they've been doing with it. I loved seeing Rainn Wilson as Harcourt Mud. I think that was great.
Actually, yeah, because I really like
that as well.
Obviously, if you aren't familiar with the history of Star Trek in the original series, Harcourt Fenton Mudd was a recurring kind of a villain, but never a particularly serious villain.
He was in two. He was in Mudd's Women, and then that one with all the flipping androids
on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Fenton was a really interesting
He's like
character.
A con man.
Yeah.
He was great.
And it's kind of when I knew that they were going to be bringing him into Discovery, I was kind of thinking, are they going to like take a character that I liked and ruin him? But actually, Rainn Wilson does an absolutely brilliant job in the one episode we've seen from Mudd so far of portraying Mudd.
Yeah, he was just betraying everybody, wasn't he? Yeah, and
faithful to the original character, but with his own take on the character as well.
Yeah,
and I like it when people can do that, rather than just a complete recreation or something completely different. Very, very, very likeable. Very much a rogue.
I've been trying to watch it kind of in a vacuum and not. I've been trying to like not know anything about it before it's going to be on the TV. So I watched that episode. I watched that with my parents when it was on the Monday, and I remember like being, "That's Harry Mudd and it's Dwight." So I was really happy about that.
It was a bit strange when they dropped the F-bomb on Discovery though, because that sort of breaks with Star Trek tradition.
That was kind of awkward. I hope they don't continue with that.
That's something I hope they don't do as well.
We don't want it to be edgy. We want it to be Star Trek. You have whatever dark stories you want, because like there always was, even in the original trilogy, there would be ones where there was like thousands of people dying or something like that. But I mean,
the crew
we
were
want
always
to watch
the
it and
beacons of
relax.
light.
Yeah, that's
Starfleet
it,
was the beacon of light, facing the darkness, facing the evil.
Yeah.
You don't want Star Trek to become the darkness.
Not that swearing is dark, but it's just a bit distasteful when you're watching it, because like people could be watching it with their kids and things like that, and it's just not necessary. I mean, who's going to think, oh, that's a much better program now because they said the F word?
Yeah.
So,
but,
just grow up.
Yeah. But we are enjoying it, and we're looking forward to seeing the rest of the series.
Enjoying the heck out of it.
How much of that have you drank?
I know. I'm just having little sips all the time, and it's just.
Dude, is that synthahol?
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm cool to talk on this. I can fly a shuttle pod.
We are, as I say, we are enjoying it, and we are looking forward to seeing how it progresses, how it develops over the rest of the series. And Mudd, as far as I know, is going to be in more episodes, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. I'm glad that some of the they've introduced some more likeable characters, and that some of the characters that we've seen have become more likeable. But I'm just really enjoying the story, and the effects that they've used are absolutely brilliant.
I loved that nebula when she went out to try and help Sarek, and he was lost in a nebula. It was all multicoloured. That was cool.
We haven't said how much Sarek is so annoying. He was always annoying in the original series, but he's just a much worse person than we realised.
Well, actually, no. I was always surprised at what an idiot he could be. Like when he was first in the original series, and Kirk was saying, "Oh, Spock, you might like to show your father around the." Oh no, he didn't know his father, did he? You can show him around because you're another Vulcan, and he doesn't want to go around with Spock. He doesn't want to talk to Spock, and then Kirk later finds out that that's his dad. He is a ridiculously hard-hearted man. But we learn a little bit about why he had such a problem with Spock joining Starfleet
in Discovery,
because
in the last episode.
Oh yeah, no spoilers. Yeah. I was about to drop a massive spoiler then.
Yeah, don't drop the spoiler. It's not an F-bomb, but don't drop it.
No, it's almost as offensive. Yeah, so anyway, I love Discovery, and I'm looking forward to seeing what episode 7 brings, and it's just hopefully one day I'll get to live in space like they do.
So, what do you think about Star Trek Discovery? Have you seen it? Are you planning to watch it? And if not, why are you listening to this podcast?
I'm sure you reckon something.
Yeah, this is not a good segment for you if you hate all things Star Trek. So, but drop us a comment, let us know what you think, and come back at the end of the series and tell us what your final thoughts are. And I'm sure we'll probably have something to say at the end of the series too.
Yeah, we should maybe do another one of these of like how it develops kind of thing. Discovery 2. Yeah. Or maybe we take it all back. That might be that might be the title.
At the end of the series, it may be Richard going there. I absolutely hated that. I can't believe they did that. Why have I been watching that for 15 episodes? And I'll be there going, you know what? That was all right.
Yeah. I'll need more synthahol.
Yeah. So, stay meddlesome.
The Meddlesome Meeples present music news and reviews in conjunction with Paradise Rock UK.
Hi everyone, welcome to Bards Corner.
Bit of information first of all, if you haven't already seen or heard it, please check out our interview over the phone with Night Ranger's Kelly Keagy.
Yes.
You can find that on paradiserock.co.uk. You can find that on the Meddlesome Meeples YouTube channel, and you can also listen to that via the Bards Corner Music News podcast. Some information on a new Houston album. Houston 3. Swedish AOR band Houston will release their 5th album 3 on November 24th via Livewire and Cargo Records UK. So for those who are unfamiliar with them, they've been around since 2010. They landed the number 1 spot in Classic Rock magazine's AOR chart that year, and that was against competition from other bands like Unruly Child, Crash Diet, Heat and Nelson. So this is one that you're going to want to check out. That's going to be out on November 24th. Also, Bad Touch are touring in November in the UK. Ahead of that, they've released a new single that's featuring Molly Marriott. You can check that out. That's Baby Get It On. It's a cover of a 1975 Tina Turner song, and it sounds absolutely fantastic. So they're also going to be starting their tour in November. That's going to be Thursday the 9th, starting at the Corporation at Sheffield, and that's going to be running through till Sunday the 3rd of December. So there's quite a few dates there, so you can check out all the information for that on paradiserock.co.uk. Now, Panorama. They are a new band. They've signed with European label Rock of Angels Records, also known as Raw Records. So you can find out some information about that online. This is produced, recorded, mixed and mastered by Dennis Ward, probably best known for his work with Pink Cream 69. But just to give you an idea of who the band is, because it is members of different bands, Christian Palin is the vocalist from Randomize and Adagio, Dennis Ward on bass from Pink Cream 69 and Unisonic, Sammy Lasagni on guitars from Gods of Silence. He used to be with Kirk and Godiva. Ben Varron is the guitarist from Amoral and Grease Helmet, and Philip Eichenberger, he's the drummer from Gods of Silence and Kirk. So members of a few different bands there. That is due for release not too long actually, early 2018, so a little bit later than some of the other albums we've talked about, but we'll bring you more information about that as it comes along. Pride and Joy Music have announced that they've signed Squealer, and now they were a German metal band. They released 7 successful studio albums between 1992 and 2008, but after 2008 they disappeared. They reunited in 2016 with a new singer, Sebastian Warner, and they're going to be releasing a new album via Pride and Joy Music. So we'll be bringing you more information on that soon. That album is due out on the February the 23rd, so a little while yet.
What reviews have we got this week, Matt?
First off, we're looking at Jeff Scott Soto's Retribution review. Now that's out on November the 10th. Now it's been 15 years since Jeff Scott Soto partnered up with Frontiers Records for his solo release.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
So they decided to make a album to celebrate that. That's titled Retribution. Now this is a very, very, very good album. It starts off with the title track, which is quite a heavy melodic rock song. Occasional feels of prog influence. But all throughout the album, Howie Simon is fantastic on guitars. Some really good solos on there. There are 2 songs that he's not on. One's called Rain Again, I think, and the other one is Song for Joey. Now on Rain Again, instead of Yeah,
we've been watching Friends. So.
On Rain Again, that's got August Sadra from the Dennis DeYoung Band on guitar and Stephen Sturm instead. But Howie Simon, other than those two songs, Song for Joey is Paolo Mendonca, I think his name's pronounced. It's I'm not sure how the pronunciation is that because it's slightly Portuguese.
I don't think anyone know the difference.
But the rest of the album, it's Howie Simon on bass and guitar, and yeah, there's some really great songs on there. One of my favourites is probably track 3, Rage of the Year. Jeff Scott Soto's vocals sound absolutely great on there. Some fantastic drumming as well as guitaring. When I actually was listening to this album for the first time, I kept going back to listen to that song again and again before I actually finished the whole album.
Oh, I know.
Rain Again was another one of my favourite songs on there. That one's a bit of a slower song than Rage of the Year, but it's got one of those like really feel good factors that you can imagine playing as you're driving along the coast or something like that. It's really good. There's 3 different ballads on there as well. Feels Like Forever is the first power ballad on the album. That carries a lot of emotion through it. But then you've got Song for Joey, which again is another softer song, but no less powerful. Retribution then starts to get a little bit faster again. Breakout comes on. That's quite a fast-paced song. There's guitar solos in there, quite a heavy undercurrent. But yeah,
I love the cover.
Yeah, the cover is very, very good.
Pretty cool.
It's got some very good artwork on that.
I was always really jealous you got to see him live as well.
Yeah.
So jealous.
Which time? I've seen I've seen Jeff Scott Soto live a couple of times.
When?
Once when he was doing a solo gig, and once as part of Wet. He's the lead singer of Wet.
When was that?
That was a few years ago.
No, the solo one, but I didn't know about Wet.
Yeah, so I've seen Jeff Scott Soto a couple of times.
Now I'm even more jealous.
Yeah, that's fine. You be jealous. I'll be cool and you'll be jealous. Okay, I'm getting an evil look here.
We're mature. We are responsible adults. We look after little people and everything.
I really enjoyed this album. I've given it a 9 out of 10. You can read the full review for that on paradiserock.co.uk.
It's pretty cool.
I would say this is probably one of the unmissable albums of 2017. Jeff Scott Soto and Howie Simon together are absolutely brilliant. There's a lot of guitar-driven songs on here, a few heavier tracks, but those are nicely balanced out by the ballads as well. There's plenty of feel-good songs, some really catchy songs. I really enjoyed this album and think that if you're a fan of Talisman, Soto, or Jeff Scott Soto's other solo material, if you're a fan of Eclipse, Wet, Pink Cream 69, House of Lords, then you definitely want to check out this album. It's probably going to make our top 5 of 2017 list. That's going to be out on November the 10th via Frontiers Music SRL. So be sure to check that one out.
And next one, we've got The Dark Element.
Yeah, now this is quite interesting. It's a new project fronted by former Nightwish and Allison Avenue singer Annette Olsen, alongside Finnish guitarist and songwriter Jani from Sonata Arctica and Kane's Offering. This is coming out on November the 10th. Now, I would say I enjoyed the first track on the album, but I wasn't too sure at first. Because it started off with a bit of an electronica metal type feel as opposed to symphonic metal, which is what I expected it to be.
I was going to say it might be what you're expecting though, because you heard her in Nightwish.
And I'm familiar with Sonata Arctica and Kane's Offering, so it was a different sound to what I was expecting, to be honest. But as it played through, I actually started to quite enjoy that song. But when the next song came on, My Sweet Mystery, it felt like I was back listening to Dark Passion play again.
Yeah.
It sort of really took the album up a few notches, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of got that ring to it, that kind of quality.
Yeah. I know Annette Olsen got a lot of stick from certain quarters, so it's not a popular thing to say, but I really like the albums that she did with Nightwish. So I'm quite happy to have an album with that kind of sound again. There's another song on there I really liked called The Ballad. Someone You Used to Know, The Ballad. That's got some really great vocals on that one. And I like the way that the song subtly shifts from sort of piano and vocals to a more symphonic power ballad sound. So I like that. Halo was another song I
quite like Halo, yeah.
Yeah. And The Ghost and the Reaper. They still had some electronic influences, but they felt a lot more symphonic than, say, I Cannot Raise the Dead, for example. So there was a few on there. There's a couple of ballads as well. Heaven of Your Heart was a good ballad, as was Only One Who Knows Me. Again, very slow start. There's a couple of other really good songs on there, Dead to Me and Here's to You. Now, if you go on to paradiserock.co.uk and you click on the album review, you'll actually be able to hear 3 of those songs, because there's videos on there for My Sweet Mystery, Dead to Me and Here's to You. All in all, I had to give this album an 8.5. There are a few things I wasn't too keen on. I didn't particularly like the slight lean towards a more electronic style as opposed to
I think that's
symphonic.
more personal preference. It wasn't bad. It was just personal preference, isn't it? Yeah.
That is entirely personal preference. But I really liked the album overall, and I felt that in many ways it felt like the natural sequel to Nightwish's Dark Passion Play album. A couple of the songs on there really made me feel like I was listening to that again. So I would say if you're a fan of Sonata Arctica, Nightwish, Within Temptation, Epica, Stratovarius, then this is an album you definitely want to check out. I'd say, although she's had a bit of a break from performing, I think, Annette Olsen sounds as good, if not better than ever. So I was really happy with this album. This has probably been one of the best female-fronted albums I've heard this year. So I'm highly recommending that. That's, again, out on November the 10th. If you go on to paradiserock.co.uk, you can get a lot more information on that. You can read the full review. So, what did you think to any of these songs, any of these albums that we've been talking about today? Let us know.
I don't know who you are, but we're the Meddlesome Meeples, and it's time to talk about books. A very particular set of books.
Welcome to this segment of Tome Talk. Now, in recent weeks, we've talked about historical fiction, we've talked about non-fiction. Now we're bringing it back to science fiction.
Yes.
And Richard's going to talk to us not about this book, but about this book's predecessor, which is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey.
Yes, so we've
Richard,
had to
tell
have
us about that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We've got a stand-in book here, which is Caliban's War, the second one. But yeah, I read Leviathan Wakes while I was away on holiday. So I just had a week to kind of relax and just read this book. It was quite long. I can't remember how many pages, but it just pretty much flew by, this book, because it has such a lot of pace in it, and a lot of action, and it's a while since I've read such a long book that had so many surprising moments that kind of kept you wanting to read the next chapter all the time, even though there's 60 chapters or whatever. So yeah, I really enjoyed that book, and I thought I definitely have to talk about that in Tome Talk. But I also thought at the same time, I think my sister would like it, so I passed it on to her when I got back from holiday. So that's why it's not here. It's because it's great and I needed somebody else to read it. So it's not.
And really, Tome Talk is all about helping people to find reading recommendations. It's in the spirit of Tome Talk, isn't it?
It is really, yes. So you may have seen The Expanse on Netflix, and that is what this book series is. So the series itself is called The Expanse. The first book is Leviathan Wakes, and I think pretty much by now they've done series 2 on Netflix, so I think that will be the whole of that first book.
There is a series 3 commissioned, isn't there, as far as I know?
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah. I think that there is, yeah. So, I had watched series 1 by the time I read the book. And, I started reading the book a while after. I think season 2 was about to come out when I read it. But I soon noticed that I'd got to the middle of the book and got to the point where the series 1 ended. So I thought, oh, okay, season 2 is going to be the second half of this book. So, like we said, it's sci-fi. It is fairly hard sci-fi, so there's not much craziness in there. Although there's a lot of weird things that happen, obviously, and like I say, a lot of action and a lot of interesting things. But the science is mostly very real. When they're travelling around in the ships, they are weightless in the ships. There's no gravity plating like in Star Trek or anything weird like that. You are just floating around unless the ship's moving, in which case you get some kind of forces acting on you. And they tend to, when they're flying around in the solar system, rather than say what speed they're going at, they say like how much gravity they get from the speed.
How many Gs?
Fake gravity. Yeah, how many Gs they're pulling. So if they're going to just kind of go quite leisurely, it would be 0.5 G. Anything over 1 G is getting pretty weird, and there is a certain speed at which they all have to strap in, and the ship actually injects them with drugs to make sure the captain and pilot at least stay awake. And for everybody, make sure they don't get horrible blood clots and die.
I do think that if you're travelling at such a speed that you have to get injections to prevent death and to keep you conscious, I think perhaps we shouldn't be travelling at those speeds.
Yeah, well, this is...
if someone says to me, would you like a car that you can drive at 150 miles an hour safely? I'd go, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
If someone says, would you like a car that you're going to have to inject yourself with drugs to stay alive in? You know what? I'll take a taxi.
Yeah, just go at a more leisurely pace.
Yeah.
So obviously it's only in like military type situations where you need to get somewhere before someone else gets somewhere. So that's when they're going to be doing this. And if they're running away from a massive Martian battleship, that kind of thing, obviously having to have an injection is better than getting blasted into radioactive vapour. So.
Well, there are people that would disagree with you.
Well, you just got to weigh priorities, really.
And there are people that would rather die than have a needle.
There are, actually, yeah. So, if you're the only person on the ship, no, I demand we all die instead of this. Yeah.
I respect your right to refuse the needle.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you just have to get squashed in the chair at that point, wouldn't you, really? So yeah, it is all set within the solar system.
Which is one of the things that's quite unusual about this, isn't it? Because most sci-fi is either on Earth, contained on Earth, or quite a sprawling intergalactic travel type situation.
Like a massive space empire or something. Yeah, but this is when we've... It's said I don't think it says it on the back of this one, but on the back of Leviathan Wakes it says something like we've colonised the solar system, but the stars are still out of our reach. And I think that's just a really good way of putting it. So it's mostly about mining civilizations that are in the asteroid belt. Particularly, most of it is set on Ceres, which you may know is quite a big asteroid there, almost a dwarf planet.
Who doesn't know that?
Yeah, okay. And then there is some other quite ghastly action that takes place on another one called Eros.
Now, that sounds like somewhere where ghastly things would happen.
Yeah, and actually, as I said, I gave the book to my sister, and she texted me a few days ago and said she's had to put it in the freezer as it's just a Friends reference, obviously.
Goes in the fridge.
Basically, when the books become a bit too harrowing, and she's at the point where they're on this other asteroid Eros, and it gets pretty grim at that point. I'd actually forgotten how grim it got at that point, and I said, "Oh yeah, sorry," but I'm sure she'll get over that, and then.
But don't be put off, readers.
Or, I mean, that's quite a good point actually, but. It is like some people like a bit of kind of horror as well. It just depends how sensitive you are and everything. Like I say,
does this come with a trigger warning?
I think it does on. On the back it does anyway. Yeah, but no. If you're used to kind of sci-fi and everything, it won't be too bad. Or if you if you read kind of fantasy and things like that, it's just you never know what's going to be what different people are going to be particularly sensitive to, kind of thing. But. Yeah, a lot of interesting things happen to the main characters, one of which is called Holden, and he is the classic kind of... Well, I would say the classic kind of space hero. He is basically the hero of it. He is very strong in his opinions of what's right, and sometimes ends up screwing up the whole of the solar system because of it. It's more of an idealist rather than... what's practical, rather than a pragmatist. The other main character, Miller, is a private investigator. Well, no, he's an actual detective. That's it. But he's kind of got obsessed with this one assignment. So he just seems like a very hard-boiled PI kind of guy who drinks a lot and talks about his ex-wife, that kind of thing. And it's just very interesting to have that kind of...
They didn't cast Nathan Fillion for that role?
No, surprisingly. But no, he would have been way too happy for that. But yeah, it's just interesting to have that kind of character in space. That's one of the things I really enjoyed, because obviously I first found out all these things from watching the series, and then in the book obviously it's a bit more detailed.
So but... where did you come to this first? Was it through Leviathan Wakes or through the TV series?
The TV series, yeah. And I saw that on Netflix.
How do you feel that the TV series stacks up with the book, and do you feel that if someone, you know, has watched the TV series, that it's worth them reading the book, or vice versa?
I definitely think it's worth reading the book, because I know often people will say the book is better, kind of thing. I just think the book the themes are a little bit clearer in the book. That's all I'll say, really. They did really well with the TV programme, I thought. Obviously, they had to change a few things to make it visually doable, basically.
You mentioned to me before that one of the things that was different was the way that one of the races, particularly Holden's race...
Oh, no, sorry, it's
Miller's race.
Yeah, so he grew up on Ceres, well, in the asteroid belt anyway. So in the TV series, they've got it that he grew up in a bit of gravity, I think. So he's not quite as tall as the belters normally are. So these people are still human, but they grew up in zero gravity. Obviously, they consider themselves to be a completely different culture. But yeah, there are some of these people in the TV series, but obviously they look very strange. I think they've had to use CGI for it, and it would be very weird to have a main character like that. So Miller he does look a bit more, he just looks like a normal guy, really. He is quite tall.
So what you're saying is that when it comes to depictions of male characters, body image is more accurate, rather than the tall, willowy...
yeah, I've forgotten what... Yeah. I'm trying to follow that, yeah.
If it was a woman, it would have this totally unrealistic depiction based on the books, but because it's a man, it gets to look normal.
Yeah, maybe. But, no, I think... Actually, coming to think of it, I don't think you could get any actor to look like the belters are described. I think you would have to do it with weird...
Painfully tall and thin.
Yeah.
You're not a football fan, but Peter Crouch?
Yeah, that's one of them, yeah. I mean, there's a point in the book where I think it's where Miller is wondering if Holden's going to punch him or not, and he's kind of thinking, like, I'm like a foot taller than this guy, but he's got like 30 pounds on me, kind of thing. So at that point I thought, how flipping tall and thin is Miller? That's ridiculous. But
and does he want to work for Victoria's Secret?
Yeah, I think you have to watch the series to see how extreme these belters actually are. But yeah, this is the other thing when I say about the themes being clearer in the book. The book is set almost entirely out in the belt. There aren't any scenes on Earth or on Mars, which are the main two inner planets that there's tensions between them and the asteroid belt. So you do kind of get a sense of like the belt is kind of disconnected from their origins back on Earth and from all the newfangled stuff on Mars. And yeah, they tend to talk about people having grown up down the well, which is like down the gravity well, and they just can't really understand the point of view of people that have never had their air and water for free as they live in the belt. And yeah, that comes across very clearly in the book. I remember being a little bit confused about what people's motivations were when I was watching the series. So because there were some scenes set on Earth, and it just there's a few characters that are in this book that they have like in Leviathan Wakes in the TV series, so they've kind of mixed it up a little bit, which is fine. And one character that I really liked in Leviathan Wakes was Amos, and he is this engineer who is very competent, doesn't talk much. You give him, well, he swears a lot actually, but you give him ask him to do something, he'll just do it. Whether it's, can you fix that thing over there, or can you abandon us all and just take that ship away? Like he'll just say, "I captain," and just kind of do it. And you kind of like him as you go along, because like he is so reliable and everything. In the book, Like he was just kind of like that. In the series, they've got it where he is kind of fiercely loyal to this. I think it's Lieutenant Naomi. So they kind of get the same kind of character, but like in a different way. And I think it's. I think that's kind of good. It's kind of a little bit of a shortcut in the series, I think, but I think that works really well. So the kind of things that end up happening were very unexpected, I thought, in Leviathan Wakes, and with it being such hard sci-fi, I didn't expect there to be quite so many crazy 90-degree turns in the story. So I just think if somebody wanted some hard sci-fi but also kind of epic as well, I think that Leviathan Wakes would be a very good book to go for. So it is a space opera, but as we've said, contained in the not too incredibly distant future.
Yeah.
And I think it does really well at having a sense of what it's like to actually exist in space, because they haven't really civilized it yet. But it's far enough in the future that there is a lot of interesting stuff happening out there. I mean, it's not like just like, well, obviously the Martian is good, but like it's just that's one guy on Mars. But this is like there being civilizations, terrorist organizations and things all out in the solar system, and really you get an appreciation of how vast it actually is. You tend to think of like, oh, there's so many planets in the solar system. I'm not going to get in the controversy of how many planets. I know that's a sore point for some people.
That's quite touchy for some people.
Yeah.
Hashtag Pluto.
But yeah, just the amazing distances, like where you are having to fly at like 5G speeds for weeks to get from the asteroid belt to the nearest planet. I mean, just thinking of those kind of distances when we're used to watching Star Trek and they just kind of zip between places because they've got warp travel. But like, yeah, it is a very interesting read, and I think people will enjoy, for one thing, the setting, but also the actual story of kind of conspiracy and characters, but all trying to do things that are what is right, but in different ways. One of the things I was going to say about Miller is that
their perception
their perceptions. Right. That's it. So Holden's a very idealist character. Miller is very pragmatic, and that kind of a clash is very interesting, I think. And also they alternate between the chapters alternate between these two characters. So for a while they're in completely different settings, but when they meet up, it's quite interesting because like there'll be a scene that's from Holden's point of view, and then maybe halfway through a conversation it kind of changes chapter, and then you get the second half of it from Miller's point of view, and you're thinking like, what's this little guy on about? Like,
it's quite interesting when things like
that kind of things happen. So I thought it was quite interesting writing. So I am looking forward to reading not only Caliban's War, but the other. I kind of assumed it was a trilogy, but actually there are a lot of these books. I'm looking forward to taking my time with them, really, and just enjoying this kind of universe. I say universe, this solar system they've invented, and I'll be interested if they actually do get to any other stars or anything. We've done enough books, so maybe.
So there we are. Richard's recommending this one. James S.A. Corey, Leviathan Wakes. Leviathan hits the snooze button.
We've been expecting you. And joining us today, a very special guest.
So joining us on the phone today, all the way from Arizona, we have a very special guest indeed. Kelly Keagy, lead singer and drummer for Night Ranger, and we're going to be discussing with him topics including Night Ranger's 12th studio album, Don't Let Up, songwriting, having 2 lead vocalists in a band, his solo material, and some excellent questions submitted by fans about topics such as Ozzy Osbourne, Boogie Nights and Sister Christian. So Kelly, a huge thank you for joining us and welcome to our show.
How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing okay. I'm doing great. Working on some songs in my studio here at home in Arizona.
Oh, fantastic. I'll definitely be asking you about that later. I really wanted to start off talking to you today about the Don't Let Up album. It's your 12th studio album, released in March, yeah? How are you feeling about the response to the album so far?
Well, I think that every time we go in to do an album, you kind of like anticipate, what it might be, and sometimes you're not sure, because if you do album, like every 2-3 years, you have to really think about what you want to write about, and, it's kind of a little bit complicated and can be a little touchy, because if you do too many albums, then it's like, you don't have a lot to say musically or lyrically. But I think that we've been lucky on the last 3 albums to be inspired, and, we got some new players in the band, Carrie Kelly, and of course, Eric Levy's been in with us for a while, and so all those elements seem to be working really well together, as well as, the kind of technique that we've been using to start albums on the last 3 records has been Jack and I and Brad go into a room, and with no, basically no songs written like we used to do in the past. We would come in, we would just go in a room and just start to, kind of jam around with different feels and ideas and musical ideas, and then as long as we stayed at it for many days, we would be at the end of the week, we'd have, half the album, and then, so the last 3 albums, that's what we've been doing.
So it's been a pretty fast process then of getting together and getting the material down.
We've been very lucky, and it's a little bit different every time, just depending on if we have 2 or 3 years in between doing them. It depends on what everybody's listening to, and, what I'm saying, more older music, blues, R&B, or more modern music. We love to mix all that stuff up, so it's been really great for us.
Because you said that working on the material for the new album, Don't Let Up, was a great experience once again. Do you find this is normal to be able to get together and just connect like that and just start writing together almost off the bat?
Yeah, it feels pretty natural. The last 10 years to always be thinking in the future, like, what can we, after touring, when we're touring, it's nothing to do with creating. As far as like new material, it's about creating something special on stage and for live and for the audience and all that. So it's a whole different thing, But when you come home after tour, with us, it's like a couple of weeks, and then we start getting antsy, like, okay, shouldn't we be working on some new ideas, and so that's when we start thinking about getting together after the holidays and stuff like that. So it's been working well.
That's brilliant. Do you know, when you're coming together like that and you're writing the material, do you find that you, as you're putting the material together, that you have a favourite song on that album, or is it like picking your favourite kid, something you can't do?
I think what it is a lot of the times, with songwriters, is like whatever you're currently writing becomes your favorite, right? But then as you get deeper into the process, you start interchanging that with other stuff. So, some of the earliest stuff, kind of, we got the attention away from it, because when you get to the end of the album, you always look at the list and go, what do we need? Do we need anything like a ballad? Do we need, more, up-tempo tunes and stuff like that? So you start focusing on that. But I think the early material that we wrote, the first 4 songs that we wrote were like the first thing was like Jamie, and then it was like, then we went into what was it? Long day's journey home in a hurry. A really up tempo a song. Then we went to the ballad. Nothing Left of Yesterday, and then it was one of the tunes. So the first 4 songs were like really special to us. We were like, this is great. Running Out of Time was another one. So then we ended up putting them on this live thing we did in Chicago. Kind of like the layout in the beginning of the album.
I have to say that Running Out of Time, it's probably the most infectiously catchy song I've heard in a very long time. When I first got the album through, that song was stuck in my head for weeks.
It has one of those like hooky little choruses, poppy, but with great guitars, and it basically sounds Night Ranger.
Yeah, that sums up Night Ranger, doesn't it? I wanted to ask as well, when you've got a band with two very talented lead vocalists, and you're coming together to write the material for the album, how do you decide who's going to take the lead on which song? Is it a case of, well, you sing this one, Jack, I'll sing that one, or is there a lot of factors to consider as to who does the lead vocals on each song?
You know how it's worked in the past, and we always joke about, because people ask those questions pretty often, and we always make a joke about, we bring up, the boxing ring and see who's ever fit that day, but that doesn't work. And what it is it's just basically, off the cuff, it's like whoever has the inspiration for it, because we let each other try them, and we're really open about, you go out there and try it, and then if it doesn't work, nobody gets upset, like, oh man, I wanted to sing it. No, it's none of that. It's like, what sounds best? And we've been playing together long enough to where it's totally cool, everybody's like, let's do what's best. And the good thing is that we do have two vocalists that we can have, a different perspective on stuff, and that's a pretty big plus in this.
Does it ever affect the writing, when you're putting a song together? Do you think, well, if I might be singing this one, I'll maybe take the lyrics in this direction, and I'm right, you ever write with Jack in mind and think, well, if Jack's going to be singing this one, I'm going to do this and take it in a different direction?
That's usually kind of the case. Jack's got a little more edgier, thing, and I'm a little smoother, more R&B, and so we always look at it like that, phrasing-wise, because we're always usually writing the music first. We come up with the melodies and the instrumentation first, and then it's nice to have this, like, this painting that's started and it's not finished yet, and you can sit there and kind of like, space out on it and figure, well, what musically is this saying? And, it's interesting like that because, sometimes it could be just something dumb that comes through and it's really cool, depending on how you set it. So, yeah, we definitely like to look at each other's vocal styles and go, this is better for you. Like on this album, I didn't sing any ballads. It's great because I told Jack, it's like you never sing ballads. How about you sing the ballad this time? And I take a back seat to that and not do it. He's got a piano ballad on every album.
That's great because I imagine it could be if you didn't have that chemistry to work together like that it could become almost, well, this is mine and I want to sing it. So it's good that it doesn't become that.
We like
between you.
Early on, I think there was some really kind of touchy moments when we had a producer involved because we couldn't make the decisions naturally and just be totally unemotional about it. Back in the day when we had a producer and there was a big record company, with all the pressure behind there, we gotta have this record out and, we gotta have this kind of song and this kind of song, it was just like, it was a little uncomfortable when the producer was making decisions for us,
And trying to take control of that creative side.
So, that's how nowadays we have a better time at it because we don't have that kind of pressure,
Good. Now, you're coming to the UK in March, aren't you? You've got 2 gigs. You've got Hard Rock Hell at Pwllheli, and you're playing at London Shepherd's Bush as well. Are there any plans in the works for more UK gigs at this point?
Yes, there were some dates that were just tentative, like we're, possibly, there's a Sweden Rocks Festival, that we hadn't played in a while. We were, possibly, but I don't, right now, I think those are the ones that we're going to focus on now. Because, we just want to focus on the UK right now because, we love going over there. Not that we don't like other countries, but we especially like coming over there because we haven't had a chance to play there as much, and I'm very excited. Every time we've played, at the Academy, it's just been like a riot. We have a great time, and so we're so happy about doing these two things, in Wales and then this one in London, and so I think we're just going to focus on those right now.
Okay, so we'll look forward to seeing you in March for those. You mentioned that you were working in your studio earlier. Could you tell us what projects you're working on at the moment?
For the last 2 or 3 years, I've been working on another solo record. I have two, and I haven't done one in like 10 years. Night Ranger's been pretty active, so I've just been kind of like writing for this project, and slowly getting it together, and I'm excited. I mean, basically, it's the stuff is pop. Because that's really what I'm about. I love pop songs, especially the earlier stuff. So I'm trying to focus on it for that. But Night Ranger is probably going to have another record in the works probably in a year. Probably in a year and a half. So I want to kind of get this thing out of the way and in the box in the next few months, and then I'll just have to see when it's going to be released. But I'm working on this thing. It's really, really good stuff. I'm really proud of it.
That's exciting. I mean, I remember buying Time Passes. I think it was the day it came out here in the UK. I remember going around singing The Journey quite a lot at the time.
Oh, that's great. We wrote that song in London too. Peter and I did.
That some of the songs on that album could definitely have been on a Night Ranger album, but some of them had a bit of a heavier feel to it as well compared to a lot of the Night Ranger stuff.
It's kind of weird though when you do solo stuff, because I definitely like the band thing more, because it's a little bit less like you don't have to make all the decisions. I mean, I'm lucky that I have some good people like Jim Peterick and Joey Scott and Bruce Geist and people like that I write with that are really close friends. So it kind of has that feel anyway. But there's nothing like the three of us, Jack, Brad, and myself, getting in a room and thrashing through a couple of great grooves, because it moves stuff along really quick. The song writing by yourself and solo, you have to go through the whole process of writing it and then recording it, and you have to get players, or you'll have to slowly build it. I can play 2 or 3 different instruments, too, and that's good enough to make it, but then eventually I'm going to have it re-recorded by pros, So that's why that process takes longer and more painstaking,
Because a lot of the guys contributed to the solo albums as well, didn't they? They were on there and helped with writing, but you had as you say, people like Jim Petrick as well coming through. So it was quite an interesting mix of talent working on those albums.
We love it. I mean, we love mix and match. It's like it's great to work on each other's projects and stuff like that. And Jack was working on stuff, and he would come and work on mine, and it's just really great fun to just be creative about that and not have any of that competition. It's like it just kind of adds negativity into it. So it's better to be a team.
Now, I just want to ask, thinking of your career so far, what would you say would be the proudest moment of your career, and conversely, what would you say would be the biggest challenge of your career so far?
Well, I think that when early on when our records were just coming out, the first 2 records, and we played all over, and the way radio used to be, there'd maybe be 3 different rock stations in any given town, and they'd all be playing your stuff. And that was just kind of like head spinning to us, We'd be like, yeah, they're playing it on this station, and then somebody call up and say, they're playing on this station too. I mean, it's like we just felt like a bunch of kids,
Yeah.
And we were just, so excited and happy to be out on tour, and then it was just a whirlwind, it just took off, and then probably the most challenging was when music changed in the 90s, and we had to figure out other ways to be creative, not to be creative so much as to get our stuff played, because people were moving on, which is natural. It's totally natural, you know. But, you know, we had to be happy with where we were at as songwriters and musicians and as a band. So in that way, it was nice to have a challenge to come up with stuff that people wanted to listen to, you know, and keep our core fans happy, you know, and keep us happy initially, you know. So, you know, there you go. There's those two things.
You've been in the music industry since you finished high school, haven't you? When did you first know that you wanted to spend your life making music, Kelly?
Well, you know, I mean, started out in a neighborhood that I had a couple of buddies that were learning how to play guitar, and it was right around when the Beatles were hitting. Certain music, you know, I'm pretty ancient, so I grew up with all this like older music, surf music, Beatles, you know, Stones, and when they were first coming out, so we tried to emulate and copy them, you know, and that was when we were 7, 8 years old.
Wow!
And I just have been playing music, you know, that long, probably, you know, 50 years of my life, 55 years, you know, and then I started playing professionally right out of high school. I started playing for my living. So playing 6 nights a week and jamming in clubs and trying to, you know, just keep going.
It's almost like you probably can't remember a time when you weren't making music or playing then, I imagine. That's correct.
I've always been doing music. People always say, you know, hey, what do you do for, you know, like a hobby or something like that? It's just, hobby? It's like, what do you mean? There's no hobby. It's all kind of like you're just engrossed in it your whole life.
What would be your advice to, you know, someone listening to this, you know, young kid in school thinking I want to be a musician one day when I leave school? What would be your advice to that kid?
I think that, you know, what it is you just have to have this like desire inside that just keeps gnawing at you. It keeps like you know, waking you up, and it keeps like you know, keeps your brain occupied with the idea of being creative, you know, whatever that is. And it's not necessarily just music, you know. I mean, you can be creative in all these other ways. You know, I think that's what it is you just have to have this like burning desire to want to keep doing what you're doing, and no matter what. And I think that's what all of us did. It was so important that we couldn't do anything else, you know.
So it's that persistence and dedication.
That's it. You just keep wanting to do it, no matter how good or bad you are. It's like sometimes you just go, yeah, that's pretty bad, but I want to get better, you know.
Yeah. I've got some questions here that people have sent to me. I've mentioned that I was going to be talking to you, so I said, you know, any Night Ranger fans out there, please send me some questions. So I've got some questions from you fans here, if you fancy giving these a shot. Carrington Martin says, as a drummer myself, I want to ask Kelly if there are any particular drummers that you looked up to growing up that inspired you, and who are your favourite drummers today?
Well, there's some really great younger drummers out there, but I always tend to go back to the you know, the older drummers that I grew up with, like Mitch Mitchell and you know, Ginger Baker. I mean, those two drummers really kind of like pushed rock and jazz, and I always thought that was like so interesting, you know, to me. You know, basically to hear a rock band playing swing was just crazy to me, you know. And then it just made me want to go and listen to what their influences were, you know. So those two drummers were definitely, and I still go back and listen to them. I still go back and go, oh, you know, I want to check that out or whatever. So I would think that you know, those two drummers, and of course, you know, the first singing drummer, Ringo Starr. Was, you know, I listened to the broadcast live in the Hollywood Bowl because I used to live in L.A. And the song called Boys, and he was singing and playing, and I was like, okay, I can do this now. You know, I think I can do this. You know, I'm going to try this out. So.
Rebecca Weingart wrote in asking, what is Kelly's favourite song to perform live?
Well, I think a lot of times, you know, the old standards that we play they've developed over the years, so they become like even more passionately played and stuff like that. So some of the songs off the first two records, I mean, When You Close Your Eyes and Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Sister Christian, Sing Away, those older ones are great. And then, it's always whatever you're working on that's current too. So we just came back from Japan and we played like 4 new songs over there. And every night we'd like put a new, like two new songs in there. And just to have the audience reaction of oh my God, they know these songs, was amazing. And so it made us every night just come to another level and play those new songs, as good as we could and possibly could. So yeah, I mean, Running Out of Time, that's a great one, and just I think that when you're working on a new album, you want to make those new songs special.
You might be surprised, several people wrote in regarding Sister Christian. Vera Christina and Sean Riley wrote in asking, did you expect Sister Christian to take on a life of its own the way it did, particularly after Boogie Nights?
No, I think that when I started writing that melody, because I started off with the chorus, and it was like, I thought it was just corny, I just thought, oh no, it's kind of corny and motoring. Everybody's like, what are you saying, And I was like, well, it's like, I don't know. It's like, it's fun. It's like you're on a motorcycle,
Yeah.
You're driving in the car. That's all it is. And then it became like this whole tribute to my sister, her name is Christy, and I just wanted to kind of be like a big brother to her and that, kind of give her a warning about growing up. That's all it was, It was simple. And had no idea that would be the song that people, recognize Night Ranger by. It's really amazing.
Because especially, have you seen the scene in Boogie Nights where they have Alfred Molina acting out high while Sister Christian's playing in the background? It makes for some very powerful viewing. And it really has taken on a life of its own, hasn't it? It's sort of almost beyond the band. People who aren't even Night Ranger fans perhaps will have heard Sister Christian and will have seen it in pop culture, in films and things like that. So it really has become this thing, hasn't it?
It was wild when that movie came out. They sent us the script, and the script was totally, just for that section, it didn't make sense. And then they actually put it together, and we went and saw it in the theater. We were like, back in the 80s, there were, we did some pretty wild things when we'd be down there making records in Los Angeles, and that just seemed like that was like a chapter out of one of the nights, that we were in LA doing albums.
Yeah.
Because I think we had been there, you go to the dealer's house, I mean, we just having fun. We're not like junkies or anything, but back then there was a lot of drugs and a lot of stuff around. We were partaking, But it seems like that was like somebody like watched us back in the day, and like, that would be a good scene in a movie. Yeah,
semi-autobiographical. Yeah.
What? It was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this, because it stayed in the Hollywood Hills, and that was just like, oh my God, crazy.
Well, I think you've kind of answered the next question, because Aaron Allsop wrote in asking what was the inspiration and meaning behind Sister Christian. Michael Schaffer also wrote in about Sister Christian, but he said, what was Sister Christian's actual price for flight?
I know, it's funny, but you can't really tell what the song's really about, but, because like when we were actually before I'd written any of the lyrics and I was saying Sister Christy, blah, 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 and I think that the band was like, what are you saying there? Well, I just want to, and I said, I'm just writing this thing about my sister, Christy. And they said, and said, "Oh, I thought you said Christian," and we all kind of like paused and said, "I think it's better." You know? So we used that, and the play off of that is even more mysterious and more and cooler. So, I mean, that's kind of kind of the license we take sometimes. Sometimes nonsense makes sense.
I think sometimes because if a song may have a more of a vague meaning, but it gives people more chance to put their own meaning into the song and make it their own. Maybe that's one of the reasons why it has grown so much into popular culture, because people relate to it in different ways.
I agree, and I think that's the beauty of songwriting and music in general, is that you don't always hear every lyric, and sometimes your imagination might draw another conclusion, which is kind of cool, in a way.
The last question that I was going to share with you that was sent in to us, Timothy Dillingham, he wrote in saying, "I'd like to ask Kelly what the mood of the band was when Ozzy hired Brad Gillis for his tour." So obviously this is referring to back in '82 when Randy Rhoads sadly passed away and Gillis stepped in on the tour. Yeah, but Timothy's asking what the mood of the band was at that time.
Well, I mean, we were definitely working, on trying to get a deal. We have I think 4-song demo out there with none of the hits on it. We had some of the, because we wanted to be a rock band, we wanted to be recognized as a rock band, so we had demos out there, and it was just kind of like, that process when your record's being shot, there's all this time that, and it's dead, it looks like dead space, and you're like, what's going on? And, we'd be writing songs, and then we'd take a break, and it just happened to be right during one of the times when we were just kind of just sitting there, not really doing any gigs. We had already written the songs and done some demos and had rockets. And Pat Thrall, who was playing with Pat Travers at the time, couldn't do it. He got asked to go and audition for Ozzy, and he couldn't do it or something like that. It was something to do like he already had a gig or whatever. So he turned them on to Brad, and then Brad and I were playing in this club band called the Alameda All Stars. And the All Stars were just playing weekends, and just doing covers. And so he got asked to fly up to New York and go to a hotel and audition for Ozzy. And the way Brad tells it, is he went in there with his guitar, thinking he was going to play with a band, and Ozzy was up in his suite, and he brought Brad up there, and he sat on the bed or sat on the floor while Brad sat on the bed without his guitar plugged in, and just sat there and played, and Ozzy just sat there and just with his eyes closed, and then just went, "You're the guy," or something like that, and he announced it to everybody, "I found the guitar player!" Unbelievable story. Wow. And Brad's like, "Well, what are you talking about? You haven't heard me play." It's like, "You're the guy." Oh my God. He was just thrown into the fire like that. And so then he finished the tour. It was 6 months. We were still trying to get a deal. And then right at the end of the tour, when they got done, and then we had a couple of dates left, like a UK date or something like that, and they recorded that live show in New York,
The Speak of the Devil.
Speak of the Devil, that's right. And so all the they were going to take a break, and then 2 weeks after that, Pat Ross, our producer, called up and said, we got a deal, with Boardwalk. We're like, oh my God! And so Brad was home, and we went right into the studio. Probably within 2 or 3 weeks, we went to the studio down to LA. We were in San Francisco.
So the timing all sort of fell together perfectly then, really.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. When we were cutting tracks, Ozzy actually came down to the studio to visit and came down and said hi, and that was the first time I saw him in head shape. We walked in, we were all like, oh my God!
It must have been strange just there recording, turning around and seeing Ozzy there.
Brilliant. Oh, God.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So, just finally then, Kelly, is there anything you'd like to say to your fans here in the UK?
No, I just feel like we're overdue for coming to play. A date, and I'm so glad we're going to be playing a ship bush. I mean, that's just legendary to me to be playing this place. But I've heard some of the recordings come out of there, and just the history that it has, and also playing with our good buddies, on Skid Row. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to have a great time, and I'm looking forward to spending some time in London.
It's going to be a great show. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us today, Kelly, and all the best for the solo album. I'm really looking forward to hearing about that when that comes out.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity, and hope to get to see you at the show. Man.
Yeah, definitely. I'm planning on being there. Look out for us. I'll buy you a beer.
Thank you. Love it. Yeah,
thank you very much. So a huge thank you to the wonderful Kelly Keagy for joining us. A big thank you to his management and to Gary at Red Sands for setting that interview up. And we want to thank all of those who wrote in with questions for us to present to Kelly. We hope you enjoyed getting those questions answered. We hope you enjoyed the rest of the interview as well. Thank you. Stay meddlesome. Not long before you came here today, there was something funny with Jonesy, the cat.
He is weird.
He is weird. He's a very strange cat. I posted a picture on Instagram of him the other day as well. Which was,
when he was broken?
Yeah,
on the chair.
When he was broken.
But he sleeps on his back.
Not long before you came round, Heather was just leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So I was saying bye to Heather and the kids in the car.
Yeah, it's because you're coming round. Bye!
Yeah.
And as I looked up, I could see in the tree at the back garden, they've got a big tree there. Jonesy was right at the top of the tree, and he was trying to stalk this bird that was in the tree.
Right.
And he was watching this bird, but then while he was doing that, this other bird landed behind him and started slowly advancing on him and stalking Jonesy.
Right.
Which was right. But then I was saying bye to Heather, so when I turned round, all of a sudden Jonesy was just there on the floor on the drive going past me, and he looked so miserable. I don't know what happened with him and these birds, but it seemed like they definitely outsmarted him.
So the situation resolved itself in some way, and it didn't go well for the cat.
Yeah.
It's Weed Killer. It doesn't take much to outsmart him.
Oh, he must have been tripping then. I mean, who knows what those birds look like to him?
He can hear fine. He's just too chill to care.
Yeah.
So there we go. That was episode 18 of the Meddlesome Meeples. We hope you enjoyed it. Please drop us a comment or an email. Let us know what you think and what you'd like. If there's anything you'd like us to discuss on coming episodes.
What do you think of Matt's beard?
Yeah, well, obviously they love Matt's beard. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. My beard could be a very divisive factor.
Well, no, everybody can just argue about who loves Matt's beard the most. I just assume that's the kind of conversations that go on online.
Yeah. I'd like to think that that's all that was happening in the deep dark corners of Reddit.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, there'll be a new subreddit about your beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, thank you for watching, and if you like watching our opinions on things, then I am just very grateful about that. It's just really nice to know that people are interested in us kind of just chatting about these board games and stuff, because we would be doing this anyway, and it's nice to do it and where people can hear.
Yeah, it is. And
willingly.
We appreciate this, because the more I can talk to you guys, the more peace Heather gets.
I know, yeah, she just looks so relaxed now.
Nah, that's because
No, I just mean, when we say thank you for watching, we really mean it.
Yeah, we really are appreciative of everyone who watches our videos or listens to our podcasts. So please drop us a comment and say hi. And come back next week where we'll be talking to Key Marcello. So, thank you and stay meddlesome.
Farewell, Quester, and thanks for joining us. If you wish to avoid the wrath of Greyscarn the Black, then subscribe to our show before you depart. Our fortress is located at meddlesomemeeples.com, or join our banners by rendezvousing with us at facebook.com/meddlesomemeeples, instagram.com/the Meddlesome Meeples, or follow the flight of the mountain bluebird to @Meddlesome Meeples. Until next time, Quester, farewell, and keep thine axe sharp.